put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. I know you're scared.
Here we are marking 100 years since World War I. World War I was the last war that actually fit how people think about war, as between two armies on a thing called a battlefield, where most of the deaths are soldiers, not civilians, where more people die than are injured and so forth. None of that stuff is true anymore. War is slaughter of innocents, of the elderly, of infants, of babies, of men, women, and children who want no part of it. This statue of the victims of war and of the lies included in the language that makes them victims of war, collateral damage rather than mass murder, it should make me grief-stricken. It should make me horrified. I hope it makes people walking through Santa Cruz horrified, but it actually makes me thrilled. It makes me joyful, because I would like to see this kind of statue in every town and every city. I'd like to see it on a massive scale on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. And there are so very few and far between monuments to peace of any sort in this country. We need peace monuments like this and events around them and education around them across this country.
This right here is so far beyond anything I know. This is so. This is where I am. This is where I want to go. This is so. Our lives turned upside down, sun below, earth above. Doesn't matter now where we go. Where we are is perfect love. We live but a few moments, give or take 100 spins around the sun. Perfect love is all there is. We breathe together. Two hearts, one drum.
And don't ever think that our group of this size is not putting out a lot of wonderful energy all over the world. Also, if you remember the Veterans for Peace when the water protectors were there in South Dakota, and the Veterans for Peace came and bowed down before the Native Americans, still chokes me up. It's so beautiful to think of the veterans saying to the Native Americans, you know, yeah, the military was there and it's done terrible things, but we're here now for peace. And that's why I love Veterans for Peace, because it's for peace. It's not against something, it's for something.
Peace begins at home, begins with us, begins in our heart. And that's where the inspiration of Tatanka comes in, and the Native Americans and all of those who have come before us talking about what a peaceful world really looks for us and what it could look like for us. And it does seem at times like an impossible dream, but it's one that we really need to work on.
War is too cruel to bear. Stop killing everywhere. We will pledge ourselves to do our share. We declare peace.
Every month, over the course of this year, on the 11th day of each month, they've hosted an event here at the town clock, and I think it's important that we recognize them today on this day, November 11th. 100 years following the Armistice Day. It was Woodrow Wilson, 1 year after November 11th, 1918, in 1919, that declared the first Armistice Day. And on that day, he brought the world together to show a sign of peace. And I think as you look on the news today and you see the outpouring of support and recognition of Armistice Day and that one moment in time when we all come together, it's important that we all think of that sense of peace, not only here locally, but globally, in terms of how we look at our own sense of peace as we live our lives here.
I want to tell you how difficult it is for you to understand what Vietnam vets have gone through for 45 years. I want to let you know how difficult it is for a man to regain the boy he lost. I want to let you know how difficult it is to still dream about blood all over your body. I want to let you know how difficult it is to see your own brothers dead and maimed and mauled. I had to let you know that. I'm sorry, but that's what we all need to know. Gail, let's sing a song about peace. What do you say? I'll do my best. I lost my voice getting so excited about that.
This is a song I wrote in 1980, and I hope you'll sing along.
There's a hope and it's awaking that the world will live in peace. Now's the time, it's for the taking. We must fight what cannot be. Because you and I alone now will not stop the insanity. But all of us united, all of us united, all of us united, will reclaim the world for peace. Because peace begins with me. Peace begins with me.
But it's important that we bring in new energy and new faces and new perspectives of ways that we can accomplish the goal of making peace our top priority, not only in Santa Cruz, not only in California, but around the country and around the world. Because people don't believe that peace is possible, which is troublesome, right? What has made them lose the faith that there's the possibility that we can achieve peace amongst all of this craziness that we see around us every day? And that comes from believing it in our hearts and partnering together with people that have those shared perspectives so that we can figure out the best way to build community power and then move forward into a brighter and more nonviolent, peaceful future together.
I walk in the spirit, I walk in the light. I walk for the children and their right to survive. And I call on my ancestors to my left and my right to walk with me, to walk with me. I walk in the spirit, I walk in the light. I walk through the darkest hours of night, and I call on my ancestors to my left and my right to walk with me, to walk with me. And I call on my ancestors to my left and my right to walk with me, to walk with me.
Look around you. Look all around you. The memorial, the clock, the time, the people. Now close your eyes. Well, you've given us respite, a gift of peace, armistice. We've developed enemies where we did not have enemies. We've armed our friends. We've developed the whole economy based on the big stick. That's our confession. Listen now to our request. It's earnest and from the heart. With these hands, we will do our best to create peace, to do no violence. We commit ourselves to debate, to strategize, to do our very best to make these next years a time of thriving of the universe, of the earth you've given us as gift.
And we honor the spirits of every veteran given his or her life in a war. We celebrate the spirits of all the peace workers who have throughout time worked and given their lives in that struggle. They are with us today. We are grateful. Aho.
We have been around for about 4 years, and our sole purpose is to reduce the suicide rate among veterans. This walk was 22 miles from Watsonville to here, symbolic of the number of veterans who commit suicide every day. It was 22. Our first walk 4 years ago, we started right there and we walked to Sacramento. It took us 2 weeks to get there, raising awareness along the way and just meeting people who needed to talk to us and to heal along the way. So we walk, and we're just going to keep on walking until we make a difference.
Thank you for your service to peace. Pardon me, and yes, we're acknowledging all the veterans. Would all the veterans raise your hand in the audience? Yes, thank you. Thank you for being here. Jimmy has really been very supportive of us, and I was on the steps here within the last week and heard your words on the courthouse steps. Really appreciated you drawing a line and standing up for the rule of law and standing up for, that's a primary pillar of peace. So we welcome you as our ally, and we have great hopes that the veterans who want to reverse the course of 100 years of arming, that you will be in the forefront of doing that. Thank you, Jimmy.
Congressman
Thank
Panetta,
you. Thank you very much.
You were the only Democratic
Thank you very much. As we support today,
to vote for that obscene military spending bill. Shame on you.
there were a
and
number.
You show up here, you're a hypocrite.
Sir.
Yes.
Thank you for being here today to support
Tell us why.
our veterans.
Why did you vote for that bill?
Thank you.
Why did you vote $170 billion to kill people? Why did you do that? Nobody, no other congressperson in this area voted for it.
Maybe he'll answer your question later, so we can.
Today,
later.
Please.
Why doesn't he
He'll
tell
answer your
everybody?
question
Why
later.
did you vote for it?
Sir, today I am here to show our support
with me, will you, brother?
for Armistice Day and for our veterans. That is why we all showed up here today.
You're a hypocrite because you voted for that bill.
I'll be happy to talk to you after, sir. Be happy to talk to you after, but
Tell us
right now,
Tell us why.
what I would like to talk about is why all of us are here right now. And that is to support our veterans. That is to support our everlasting commitment to peace. Ladies and gentlemen, we understand that the reason why as a nation we have existed is because we have persisted. This is not a country that is based on bloodlines, that is based on the size of our property lines, that is based on a king or royalty. This is a country that is based on our common creed, that we are all created equal. This is a nation that is based on our shared beliefs of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we understand as a nation what we must do to bolster and continue that creed. And that is why we must stand together today. That is why we are not an autocracy of me, the president. We are a democracy of we, the people. And so it has been left up to we, the people, us, to stand up, to serve, and to make sure that our values are upheld. What we need to realize, though, is that we can never, ever turn our back on those members of our society that ran forward. We can't do that because, look, when America policy and American policy makers dictate sending our troops into harm's way, then those troops at war and thereafter are every American's responsibility.
I have stood by veterans and with veterans for the last 30 years. They have been my mentors, and I don't think we have a more powerful voice for peace than when a veteran speaks. Just by coincidence, and we didn't know this when we invited Keith, he has recently written a song called 22 Angels, and it's dedicated to the whole issue of the suicide rate among veterans.
This is for my friends who have walked so far. This is for the veterans that we have to take care of, and this is called 22 Angels. 22 angels, 22 angels, 22 angels at the edge of every day. 22 angels, 22 angels, 22 angels to carry them away. They say that in this life, when light fades to black, you just keep marching forward and you never look back. And they told us that honor would carry the day. They said our nation would be there if we ever lost our way. And we fought in the jungle and we slept in the rain. We held on to each other to deal with our pain. Some came back in bags, but we all came home alone. Some are still over there, searching for old bones, Lord. 22 angels, 22 angels, 22 angels at the edge of every day.
Serving does carry a weight, and weights are easier when they're collectively carried by a community. And so I was thinking that if we as a community can come together in a way, irrespective of what our views are in regards to politics, ideology, but in this case, come together for the vets, the weight that they are carrying right now, and carry it collectively as a community, the things that we can do for that 1% that have served are amazing. And so think about those sunrises. Think about the one today, think about the one tomorrow, and think about it as an opportunity for renewal, an opportunity for a new chance, a new beginning. And we can help as a community lift those collective weights off of the vets that are carrying them, including those that these marched so much for the voice that they don't have anymore.
I fished this picture of my grandfather out. He was a World War I veteran. He was in the fire department. And he was good with horses. He's from Kansas. And the fire trucks were drawn by horse-drawn at that time. Think globally, act locally. Sounds so simple. And on this day of such great importance, that old song keeps playing in my head, ain't gonna study war no more. I'm reminded of how many armed conflicts there are around the planet right now, since the war to end all wars ended. In a recent study, the Institute of Economics and Peace in Britain said there are only 11 countries that are free from conflict. I thought I would read the list of the wars that are going on, but rather I'm reading a list of 11 countries where there's an absence of conflict. There's a conflict scale. Switzerland, Japan, Qatar, Mauritius, Uruguay, Chile, Botswana, Costa Rica, Vietnam, Panama, and Brazil. 11 countries in all. And surely, my friends, on this 100th commemoration of Armistice that ended fighting in 1918, we have our work cut out for us. I come back to thinking globally and acting locally. My yoga teacher this morning said, take notice. I ask you to take notice. As Darrell Darling said before, take notice of your neighbor next to you. Take notice of where we are, the town clock. There's no mistake that this celebration is occurring here, right now, on this day and this time.
I invite you, on the veterans that you meet, if you can take some time to hear their story. I've been involved my whole life. I've learned so much in the last year working with our veterans. Each one of their stories is incredible, that journey that they take to heal from that war and move toward peace. It's a gift to us. We're going to welcome people who we want to join us as they are them. Nobody has to deny anything of themselves. It's a healing process. So we welcome all of us. We're not going to make peace on this earth by having any enemies anywhere. It's a challenge to us to look in our own mirror, to be humble enough to listen, be humble enough to serve.
Well, this is a list of names of people who, quote-unquote, gave their lives to World War I. Some would say had their lives taken from them. We're told by these monuments, including this one, that they served a service, that they did some service for their country by giving their lives. I think this is a piece of war propaganda disguising itself as mourning for the dead, which is, of course, appropriate and necessary and important for any decent society to mourn the dead. But in the United States, mourning the dead is very insidiously transformed into propaganda for creating more dead. This thing went up here in 1928, 10 years after the end of World War I. And in those 10 years, the United States saw more peace activism than ever before or since. And it was this same summer that this monument went up, that a treaty was created in Paris, France, at the instigation of the United States and at the urging of peace activists in the United States and around the world, that banned all war and still bans all war and is on the books banning all war, the Kellogg-Briand Pact. But it was not a complete cultural victory. You still had advocacy for war. You still had weapons manufacturing growing rapidly. You still had a political establishment that preferred fascism in Europe to communism. And so Armistice Day, which grew out of that November 1918 and became a peace holiday and was labeled by the U.S. Congress as a holiday for peace and a holiday to devote yourselves to making brotherhood and sisterhood around the world and working for the end of all war. After the destruction of Korea in 1954, they changed the name to Veterans Day. And it's not a neutral change. It's not a change to something like Remembrance Day, which was the existing and still current name of this holiday in a number of countries. This was to be a war holiday, so that now you have cities around the United States where Veterans for Peace groups are forbidden to take part in the Veterans Day parades because they're for peace. It's a war holiday, less obvious, less vulgar, less offensive than a weapons parade for Donald Trump through the streets of Washington, but it's a war holiday, and we're just loaded with war holidays, and we have so few peace holidays, which is why we have to reclaim some of them as well as creating new ones. And we have to reclaim Armistice Day as a day for mourning and a day to work for peace, to do the very best thing you can do for veterans, and that is to stop creating more of them.
Goes, let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me and each of you. Let's leave this wreath. It will be raised and lifted up later, placed on this memorial for all to see. But I thank you for being here today as we initially put this down in honor of Armistice Day, the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I.
This is a bell that's made from a military shell, and it's so wonderful to think of that transformation from a shell into a bell, and how our lives are really like that in a way, maybe, especially veterans that have come back from seeing terrible things, and they need to make that transformation. And so we all, I suppose, are some form of a veteran, but we all need to make that transformation from being the kind of conditioned person that we are into being whatever it is that really rings and sends our life and light out to the world. So I'd like to ring this bell for that transformation.
So this is the initiation. This is the beginning of what we hope will be an ongoing, I call it a community union of peace, a union to create a more perfect union in our local community based on peace that is active nonviolence, dedicated to rights of nature and human rights. I will repeat again, since 1999, 5,200, a little bit more, of our men and women died in combat. And how many died by taking their own lives in that same period? Minimally, 125,000. That's probably vastly underestimated. That's something to ponder. 25 veterans taking their own life as opposed to being taken by an enemy.
Sanctuary of my soul. And no one and nothing can ever take that away from me. And no one and nothing can ever take that away from me.
And as veterans, one thing that I realized is that the more time that I wasn't serving was the more time that I was dying. Right? It is something ingrained in us that we said as children, like we will go do the dirty deeds, we'll give our lives so everyone else doesn't have to. That's something at a vibrational level that probably none of us can really explain. But I definitely see that there is a potent, positive message within that vibration of service, and that's what we really want to do with Holistic Veterans. So today we have a small clinic upstairs with 10 practitioners. So really would encourage all of you to come and share some healing with us. You know, it helps us to serve you.
We say thank you to the Great Spirit, the great mystery of life. And we mostly thank the Earth Mother because she gives us so much. And the sun, the great sun up above us, all around us, and the great moon. All these things combined together makes up life, the universe. That's why we're here. We're here for a purpose. And your purpose is to serve, is to give back to the Earth Mother.
You know, as a Vietnam veteran, I volunteer over at Soledad Prison, and I've been doing that for 28 years, you know. But also, I wanted to say about a veteran that I've been working with there, and we've become great friends. His name is Stevenson, Craig Stevenson, and he's been incarcerated for 43 years, and he's a Vietnam veteran. And there's 200 Vietnam veterans in Soledad, and that's only one prison out of 36 or whatever the count is now. And all those veterans that are today are behind those bars. Still, some of them that came directly from Vietnam or came from Vietnam, and all of you that are Vietnam veterans, you know the welcome that we got, and we went into the drugs and violence and got caught up and went straight to prison and been incarcerated ever since. And so I pray for those brothers. We need to bring them home. We need to bring them home. We need to bring wherever veterans are. We need to bring them home because we don't need no more veterans of foreign wars. We don't need one.
You know, as a Chicano, as an Indio, we're intertribal people also, but many of us have lost our way as Indian people. And what I'm trying to say is that I had to go through a healing, in a bad way. And I found my healing. Long story short, but I know that there's a lot of veterans who are suffering and are hurting, and a lot of veterans that came back all over the world. I mean, a veteran is a veteran from 10,000 years ago to now. It's the same veteran, male or female, what they experience, and it's healing that they need coming back. And it's not there for a lot of guys. It's not there for a lot of the women. They try to. I know they try. I tried, but I found my way to the circle. I found my way to my people, my community, and ceremonies. And I call it the circle of life.
I think that most people think of the military, the U.S. military, which is, let's not forget, the largest organization in the world, in so many countries, permeating this planet, as something that's impenetrable, something that we can't know about. It's behind a wall. And there's no way to go in unless you are a young person entering into the narrow doorway of lies that are told to you in entering into the military. It is not. I just want to say it is not. And I have learned that in the many years of GI rights counseling. We've worked with people who are in the military already, or approaching it, and with the intention of helping them get out or to heal from within. The suicide rate inside the military members, is great. It is uncalculable because they aren't called suicides. But people die every day. Many, many people die in the military outside of combat. Listen to veterans. Listen to veterans. I have such incredibly deep regard and gratitude for the men who come and women who come home from wars and are willing to tell the truth about their experience. It's not easy to do. And the fact that they will do that to protect the next generation because they care enough about them, not to lie to them, but to tell them the truth, is something it's very moving to me. I want to educate people in how to educate young people about what the military is. And veterans have the most powerful voice in telling people what it was like by your own experience, your honest experience. That's the first thing. But the rest of us can also not betray our youth when they are needed for some other rather big jobs, like saving the planet. You know, we need their energy and their intelligence and their health. And they need to know that we need them. They need to know that they are valuable other than as killers. We need to know that we need them as young parents and teachers and nurses and people who can make a difference in the world. And that we value them enough to tell them the truth and not betray them.
Standing up for love. 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 We are standing. We are standing. Standing up for love. When I'm feeling lost and darkness is around, here I am again. So little and so small. Look inside for strength and find love that answers my call, that comforts me and keeps me standing tall. Standing up for love. Standing up for
And I've noticed that all thriving communities have three fundamental things in common, whether they be families or neighborhoods or villages or corporate events. I call these the 3 C's of community. They are communicating, collaborating, and celebrating. Yeah. So briefly, communicating has 2 elements. It begins with listening to each other with open ears, open minds, and yes, with open hearts. The second part of communicating is developing the skills, and they are skills, to express ourselves clearly and articulately with each other. Not at each other. We see plenty of that going on these days. With each other. To create a free flow, an energy of communication. Second C is collaborating. That simply means willingly engaging with other people to make things happen together. To make things happen together. The final part of celebrating is based on the simple truth that life is a miraculous blessing. Being alive is a blessing. And the single most profound way that we humans have ever created to acknowledge and reinforce the blessings of life is to gather together with other people and have fun and create something and get energized together. Not hold back waiting for somebody else to get it going, but jump in together. Every one of you is here because you want to get together with a community to make the things happen in life, in our world, in our globe, in our country that we want to happen. We want to stop the things that we don't want to continue to happen by replacing them with things that we do want to happen. It's not just about stopping the bad, but it's replacing it with the positive. For that, we need the day-by-day, step-by-step journey.
Lend an ear to this old man for just a moment longer. I've seen a thing or two along the way. If there's one thing that I'm sure of, and I'm not so sure of much, I'm certain only love can conquer hate. Yes, I'm certain only love can conquer hate. And here's where you sing now. Only love, only love, only love can conquer hate. Let me hear you now. Only love.
When I look at the role of women in war, I mean, it just seems to me, it used to be that we were the supporting fathers and brothers and husbands and sons, and they were going to war, and we were like their support team. And then in the World War II mobilization, we went into the factories and started making all the bullets and doing all the things and the clothes and making the food and everything that was necessary to run the country, actually, while they were gone. And now, then in the Vietnam War period, we were part of the peace movement because we knew the people who were being wounded and killed. We were related to them. They were our friends, our brothers, our fathers, our husbands, etc. And I remember the day that I realized that Vietnam War was a real sham. And it was a complete worldview changer for me that day. I remember the light bulbs in the room because it was so traumatizing to realize that our country was not over there for freedom and democracy. It had an imperialistic agenda to go into Asia. So now where are we? Women are actually the soldiers now. So, you know, that's part of the feminist movements, getting equality. So now we're in there too. Now, where are we at this moment in time? I think we have to look at big oil and really think about it. Because the war in Afghanistan and the wars in the Middle East are about big oil. There's no question about it anymore. And the two biggest threats we have to peace now in this time, this is a historic time, there's never been anything like it for the human family. Because the two greatest threats that we face are growing fascism in our country, and there's no question about that anymore either, and climate change. People make problems and people solve them. That's really what's going on here. And we have to remember that. And we are the people. And we need to remember that we have power. And that the problems that we're dealing with are all created by people. So, if we get together and decide to solve them, we can do that. It's happened over and over again, particularly with Americans when they finally get pushed to the wall. They can really make miracles happen. So that's kind of where I think we're at. I encourage you, if you can, to think about how, you know, I guess it's what John Kennedy said. Think not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. I would say, bigger than that, think what we can do for future generations, what we can do for the planet, what we can do for the world. This is the time.
The young men and women who are in our United States military services couldn't pass a test on what's really going on because they have been led to believe that they can have blind confidence in our leaders, our civilian leaders. And they will go in and do what it is they're told. and they'll do it well. They'll do it better than almost any other military in the history of the world, other than Rome. And they will, in fact, project U.S. military power throughout the planet for the very purpose that is stated in the classified second iteration of the 1992 United States Defense Department Policy Planning Guidance document, a top secret military plan for the Defense Department to, in fact, establish a new Northern Industrial Alliance, which will be made up of the United States, Canada, Mexico, and they have parentheses, not the indigenous Mexicans, but in fact the PRI, which are the Spanish, Castilian Spanish party in Mexico, and England, the UK, and Spain, and Italy, and it said, and the new reunified Germany, and Russia. Russia, if they choose to do so, now that they have spun off all of their ethnic provinces. Just listen to what that means. They're talking about all of the major Caucasian nation states to form a new Northern Industrial Alliance, and that the purpose of this alliance would be to maintain our continued privileged access to the strategic raw materials needed by members of our new Northern Industrial Alliance. That's what's going on here. That's what's going on. And I believe if we can participate with people in the observations we've made here today are extremely important, because we know that what's getting ready to happen now is there's going to be a growing dialectical confrontation between these extreme right-wing elements and the secular, hardcore, leftmost wing of our progressive community vying for power in the United States. Okay, we cannot allow this to happen. We have to have an infusion of genuine spiritual values into the dialectical dynamic that is going to be taking place over the next 2-year period. That is a mission that we have at the Romero Institute. That's what we're in the process of discussing now, because we have to get in and establish a perspective that addresses and stops global climate change. Because global climate change is going to be the lever by means of which the fascists inside governments all throughout Europe and in North America are going to be using to justify the rise to power of an authoritarian regime.
Many pray along the way. They don't stop to wonder what the world is coming to. They let something higher reveal the way to greater love. Well, yes. So the truth is telling me, sing of liberation for the ones who are not free. Love can take us higher, reveal the way to greater love. Well, yes, so we let it lift us higher, make us kinder, wash over us, we let it be, we let it early in the morning, hold us together, now and forever, we let it be, we let it.
We tend to think of peace as a noun. Peace is a verb. Let's sink in for a second. Peace is a verb. It is an activity. We cannot get to peace as something out there that's tangible that we would call a noun without bringing the activity of peace itself. So the peace that we call a noun is just the natural byproduct. It's just the outcome of the activity of peace. But just like you cannot have a building without the process of building. If we want peace, We can't just be looking out there at what everybody else is doing. We have to recalibrate inside, within our very soul of souls. This recalibration inside means that we have to allow ourselves to rise above the slings and arrows of misfortune, as Shakespeare would say. It means, my mentor, Michael Beckwith in Los Angeles, always taught us that pain pushes until vision pulls. Pain pushes until vision pulls. And when we are just pushed by pain, we don't have peace. We don't have peace until we are pulled by a vision that we can see. I'm not saying that the pain doesn't have a point, but if all we do is react to pain, then we're just getting jerked around. And this is what I find is happening now with those of us who call ourselves progressive about peace. We're just like little marionettes right now. Whoo, this is the White House. Whoo, this is the economy. Whoo, this is the war. Whoo, whoo, whoo. And every time we're getting our strings jerked, and what peace is cut those cords. You cut those cords and you stand in your own sense of power, of who you are and what you know that you are about. And instead of reacting to everybody else's agenda, you put forth your own vision. And let that be the place where you stand, where you call the discussion and the vibration up to you. To you. To you. It can be done. And I'll say one last thing about this before I sit down. In order to have this peace unleashed, we have to no longer be pushed by pain and pulled by vision. And the other thing that we have to do is to praise our own resilience. The resilience of the human spirit, which means we have to practice a little bit of let go. You can call it non-attachment. You can call it forgiveness. You can call it keeping the faith and stepping on. I don't care what you call it. But what it boils down to is remembering that you are greater than the sum total of everything that has ever happened. That the goodness in each of us is greater than any bad thing that any of us has done. And I'll leave you with this image, because to me it speaks to this peace in the spirit that I'm talking about. It's a story of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It says he's walking down the street, and this white man stops him. He says, "Are you Martin Luther King Jr.?" And he says, "Yes, sir, I am." The guy spits on him. King just stands there. He opens up his coat, pulls out his handkerchief, wipes off his face, wipes off his suit, takes that crumpled up handkerchief, takes the white guy's hand, sticks it in his hand, looks in his eyes and says, "I think this belongs to you," and keeps on stepping. That's peace of the spirit. Wipe it off. This ain't got nothing to do with me. This is your stuff. I got places to go, things to do, people to see. I don't have time to be jerked by your strings. Amen.
Last night I had the strangest dream I ever dreamed before. I dreamed the world had all agreed to put an end to war.
put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Lift up your eyes. Lift up your eyes. Don't you despair. Don't you despair. Look up